Let's go to the phones. You call them from a...
It's like a level of bizarre that even like we can't deal with anymore. It's just like,
exactly.
all right, whatever.
412 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Lance from Pittsburgh.
Hello, Lance.
Calling with a question for you guys. Yeah, calling with a question for you guys. Something I've been wondering about for a while. It always bothers me when people in the media use words as though we all agree what they mean, and it seems to me that we don't. So the words are identity politics, and not to drag you too far into the Jordan Peterson stuff, but I've tried looking this word up, and I can't figure out who's using it how. It seems like there's 2 or 3 or 4 different definitions of what this means. I don't understand if identity politics refers to the people who form groups and make political associations, or whether it refers to politicians trying to appeal to those groups. So this may be a thorny question for you, but what are the several different definitions? What do people mean? What do people with good faith mean and people with bad faith mean when they use these words?
My sense is that identity politics means when people choose to support other individuals, they choose to vote based upon a shared inclusion in some type of social or ethnic or racial, or I guess, perhaps even theoretically economic group. And that's, I think, what it is. I happen to think that all politics on some level, and it may vary from individual to an individual, are identity politics. You vote, for someone who you trust. You support someone who you trust will carry out an agenda that you subscribe to, and very often that trust, is formed by a certain level of familiarity. You understand where they're coming from on some level. And there are different, signifiers for that at different times. But I think for those who use it, and then I don't know if the usage of it is really radically different. It's just a question of whether or not people think it's somewhat valid, or the matter of degree. I think that's my sense.
Do you have time to read a short book?
Well, not right now. Just
recommend
the book.
Okay. I mean, there's some subtlety to it. But the book In Mistaken Identity by Assad Haider, he really distinguishes I would set aside. Jordan Peterson is basically talking about like advancing civil rights writ large, right? Like that's a reactionary, discredited argument. Matt, go ahead.
It's one remove from like them saying black people are like just on the Democratic plantation. They say they're voting identity politics instead.
Precisely.
That's the way the IDW
that's just
uses it.
wine track like Rush Limbaugh talking points. Inside the left, there's a real debate about this that usually gets, I think, pivoted as posited as a false debate between economic and also recognizing different types of identity oppression, essentially. And Assad Haider, what he does in that book is he identifies a deep tradition of quote-unquote identity politics that emerges out of things like the Black Power movement, which also have a socialist and anti-colonial base and a broad humanist project, with what identity politics means in a kind of corporate Democratic Party context, which is just like identity signifying with no policy meat. So I would look into that. The Peterson stuff, don't take that seriously. That's just a classed up right-wing talking point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good kind and a bad kind of identity politics, I think is what Michael was just describing. It's often used by centrist liberals as a sort of anti-class politics, even to try and... It's a bad faith attack on the left, basically. But where identity politics actually come from, and I think the phrase identity politics actually comes from this too, was the Combahee River Collective statement that was released in 1977 by a Black lesbian socialist feminist group. And it was meant as a corrective to make socialist feminism better and more inclusive of marginalized people, because we all live in the world, right? And left movements are not immune from institutional racism, sexism, heterosexism, whatever. So I guess the idea is if we want to avoid reproducing those oppressive things, then we need to be always working on it and keeping an eye out for it. It's not going to happen on its own. So that was what identity politics were supposed to be. So when I hear, I don't know, some centrist liberal trying to use it against the left, it just makes me want to laugh.
Well, thank you all for your points on that. And just want to agree with something Sam said, which is that everybody uses it, right? There's nothing more identity politics than a Republican politician pointing a gun at his daughter's boyfriend on TV trying to run for office. But love the show.
That's
Thank you all
cheap
so much.
signifier. Yeah, that's the kind of signifier identity politics separated from me. The other thing is right, like white identity politics is the original identity politics.
Of course. Yes. I appreciate the call. I mean, there is a party that really does hew to identity politics in this country, and that is the Republican Party. It is 95% white.
And in the cheap negative way that people critique it, because that's all about, just cultural signifying and positing your identity against somebody else through resentment.
Yeah, when Hillary
There's
says
also like tribalism, tribalism. There's the Venn diagram is it's not 1-to-1 over that, but there's tribalism, which is sort of like the identity politics that I think people lament on the left. And there is, and perhaps they supposedly, they perceive it as the exclusive, on the right, they refer to it exclusively as that identity politics are exclusively tribal. The irony, of course, is that they have the most homogeneous tribe.
Yeah.
In fact, the most definitive and defined tribe.
Or you think about like all the Gamergaters who would, if you ask them, will probably be against identity politics, but that entire thing is an identity political movement.
Yes, we have a problem with women who are in any way injecting their values.
Shut up! It's about journalism.
We're gamers.
Shut up!
There definitely is a good faith argument about it happening within left spaces. And I know you've had Adolf Reed on your show a bit, Michael, and we don't always agree on what the left should be doing. Like, I think he thinks like the DSA shouldn't have a Afro-Socialist caucus because you're dividing people from one another based on race. But like, I mean, we can disagree on it.
That's a bit of a different argument he's making than that. But yes, that's somebody who, Adolf Reed, I think, has a great critique of identity politics, which is obviously not a Jordan Peterson critique.
Like, I don't agree with him, but it's certainly a critique made in good faith.